But my sort of advice to both young and more mature founders is use your strengths because they are different. Find out what they are. And we've talked about a lot of them here. Use that, double down on that. As you get more mature, you might have less time, you have family and so on. Focus and use the strengths you have. I think that's sort of my thing, really. Hey everyone, this is Heini Zachariassen here and welcome to Founders Weekly, where we tell startup stories you can learn from. Today we're going to find out if a startup founder needs to be in their 20s to be successful. My co-host today is Hassan Bazzi. He is a founder, a developer, and a friend. So how old are you, Hassan?
I just turned 31.
Oh, there you go. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And is this, when you're 31, maybe it doesn't matter that much, but is this something you think about?
I like it. I think being surrounded by wise people like yourself, you look forward to becoming older and learning a little bit more. So it's fine.
Thank you. That's kind of you. How old were you when you started your first startup?
See, I was doing like my own kind of business for a while. From when I was very young, I was like 14. But I would say like first founder thing was at 25.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's get started. So the tech world often glorifies the image of the young, scrappy entrepreneur. Think a Mark Zuckerberg founding Facebook at 19 or a Bill Gates starting Microsoft at 20. This stereotype has become deeply ingrained into startup culture, where youth is often equated with innovation, risk-taking, and a fresh perspective. However, this perception might not be accurate with the actual realities and research. Before we go to the research, any comments on this? This is true, right? We often see these young founders as the ones that are going to revolutionize things.
We do. I think the word you used there, glorified, is the perfect word actually for this, and we're about to find out why, right? But I think glorified is the right word.
Yeah, it really feels like that, but also. It's also storytelling, right? It's also a better story if someone is young, or it just becomes a little bit more interesting. But let's have a look at what the research says. A study by the MIT Sloan School of Management found that the average age of a successful startup founder is 45, challenging the idea of the younger is better. The data was derived from analyzing 2.7 million founders of companies over the past decade. So actually, the average age is higher. What do you say about that?
I had no doubts. Again, like the younger age, it's better for Netflix. It's better for storytelling. I think a lot of things in the startup world, and you know this, is all about the story, right? It's all about the person that, maybe you need to raise this much money in order to be successful. You need to be this old. And it's all based on, that's because they did this and they became successful. But in reality, there's so much nuance in everything. And with this one...
Totally.
Yeah. With this one, the older age just totally makes sense, right? The older you are, the more experienced you are.
At least, yeah. And we always want to put things in boxes and say, this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it, and so on. Obviously, things are much more nuanced. But now we talk about the average age, and the research says successful. What does successful mean? And because there could also be a performance difference. And you're successful, but some of the younger ones are very successful, or maybe not. So that's what the next one sort of talks about. The Harvard Business Review published an article that highlighted research showing founders in their 40s have a higher success rate. The study pointed out that companies founded by people in their 40s are about twice as likely to succeed as those founded by 30-year-olds. And again, that sort of confirms that the odds of succeeding are at least bigger. What do you think?
The metrics of success are different, right? For every startup. And it's also, I feel, and I could be wrong here, but a lot of people that start companies in their early 20s, I feel like their success is like they sold the company or like someone acquired them. At least that's what I hear in my circles, quite a lot of that, versus like someone actually building a company and having a successful product and building a good team and being able to bring amazing co-founders in and having the right investors. Like these are the real, things that you need for a strong company. I see that a lot more with older founders, at least founders with that experience and that network. Whereas if you're in your 20s, how are you even supposed to do that, right? Versus having the super idea and the Mark Zuckerbergs and all of that.
Yeah. This is interesting, right? Because let's challenge. So the research here is, sounds pretty clear. Like you're up to a certain age, at least it looks like you're more successful. But what about the big ideas? What about if you look at some of the big ideas that we have? Let's take Google. Definitely were young. Meta, Facebook. He was very young. They were young. And then you have something like Snapchat. Same thing. I think Snapchat was also a sort of very innovative idea. And Evan, at least, I think he was 21 when he founded it. So is there another correlation here that the young founders come up with more innovative ideas? Is that something?
I think, of course, right? Like it's about challenging the conventional norm, right? What's currently there? Like if right now you were to tell me, hey, I'm going to build a better Vivino, right? I'm just going to say, as a now somewhat older person, I'm going to go like, no, I'm not going to challenge Vivino. Why would I do that? Like it's just not an idea. Whereas someone in their 20s might just say like, I can do it better. Who cares if they're doing it? So it's this like bigger kind of aptitude for risk. But also this idea that I don't care if someone else is already doing it. And Facebook, it's not like it was a new idea or Snapchat or a lot of it. It was something that just did something else a little bit better. I think Snapchat
was them.
Snapchat a little bit, yes. There were some attempts at Snapchat, but Snapchat's execution is probably actually one of the best executions for an app
product
ever.
Incredible. Yeah. So we're going to have a guest on in a few minutes. Before we get there, I just wanted you and I talk a little bit about the differences here. So you were a little bit into it, sort of talk about maybe risk. So that's the first dimension I'd love to talk about is the risk versus experience. And are younger founders more willing to take risks? What do you think?
I'm going to keep this very raw, the way we usually do it here. I think younger people just are way more okay with eating more shit. It's just a matter of
putting up with stuff.
Yeah. Like I'm just going to sleep in my dorm with my 7 friends while I work on this. I don't care about having a slightly nicer apartment, or I'm going to eat ramen for 4 years while I build this company. I think like that's one aspect that really affects this whole like risk-taking approach. Another thing is also this hustle thing, which again, I'm not arguing it's better, but younger people do tend to hustle a lot more. Now, as I grew older, I kind of went against that. I started realizing like, oh man, like when I hustled in my startups, like a lot when I was younger, I actually ended up building shittier products because.
So I want to hear your definition of hustle in this particular point.
Long hours.
Okay. Just hard work.
Hard work
and a lot of it.
Tons of hard work and just like going at it and like neglecting your health and neglecting your relationships and all of that. When you're older, you have so much of those. You have a family, usually all of that, right? So you're able to neglect yourself a lot more. You need less sleep. You can survive on a McDonald's thingy every now and then or ramen. Whereas while you're older, we just need to take care of ourselves. So there's a lot less of that. And also you start realizing, or like what I'm interested in is like, what are the young founders that are taking care of themselves, that are putting in less hours and still excelling? And usually I think excelling more.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a little, our friend, David Heinemeier Hansen once said, there's big companies and they have like thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, and they're working on this like one thing. Your advantage against them is that you actually have less hours during the day. So you might be able to put, I don't know, as a whole company, 1,000 hours in a week. They can put 1 million. And the only way you can actually beat them is if you outsmart them. So you can't outwork them. It's impossible. And the only way you can outsmart them is a well-rested mind and body. And I wholeheartedly believe in this.
Yeah. The other thing I think in that same realm is that you can outfocus them. And that also goes for the more experienced founder. That's something that I felt is that so much better at focusing and just cutting away all the BS. Look, sorry, we're not going to do that. There is, sure, you have some courage and risk taking and so on as you're young. But somehow also as you get older, you cut off things that is like, yeah, this doesn't matter. This is a waste of time. I think you do waste a lot of time, more time when you're younger. And the other thing you came into when you said, hey, young people can just handle more, sleep on a mattress. But that jumps straight to the third thing I had on my list here, which is life stage, right? it's easier to sleep on a mattress when you don't have a partner and 3 kids, right? That makes it a little bit harder. So it really matters, life stage. And obviously younger people often don't have 3 kids.
One tiny aspect also that I wanted to mention is combining the two. That's what's worked for me, to be honest, and that helped me a lot in my career. My co-founder, Ahmad, was 45 when I was 25. And there was a lot of that, I'm the crazy person in the, decision room or whatever, as we're like making sometimes rash decisions. And he's like, wait a minute, let's think about this.
Cool down.
Yeah. And that really, really helped. Like that wisdom, I think, combined with my craziness was a good combination.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to that later. I think diversity on all kinds of levels matters. And I think diversity in age might also really, really matter. So we had risk experience. I had also life stage on my list here. The other thing I had on my list here was ambition level. And we touched on it just before with some of these bigger plays here. Is that a thing too that shall we say more mature founders have a lower ambition level, or is less craziness? Where are you at with that?
Wow, I can totally see that. Same thing. Like when I was younger, it's like I want to build the biggest company in the world, and I want to become a super millionaire, and blah blah blah. And then as you get older, you realize like what really matters in life, I guess. So yeah, I think your definition of life just changes a lot more. You become, again, like a lot of that wisdom comes in. So I can totally see that. And so you might aim just very, very differently, right?
Yeah. And it could also be that some of the really ambitious companies, we mentioned Facebook, Snapchat, and so on, really disruptive, ambitious, they become really, really big. But actually, it might be that even it's more riskier. So you really need a big portfolio of young founders to get one or a few of those big ones. Whereas, lower ambition level, more safer investment.
Yeah, I mean, everything we're saying now, we have to remember like the first 2 pieces of research you talked about. When you're older, you are more successful. So yes, you might have all this risk stuff as a young founder, all of the stuff we're talking about, and that's great. It doesn't mean that they're going to be successful founders, right? So
it might be higher risk, but also higher output, right? That's they usually correlate, right?
They do, and I think a more mature founder is actually better at taking risk because it's about calculated risk. It's like, to me, a game of poker, right? Where sure, you might have someone that's really eager on the poker table, and you're going to see like younger poker players, professional poker players don't do so well versus like older ones that, again, can take those calculated risks, because there is a risk in the end, but it's to know when to go in and when not to go in.
I mean, I'm not great at poker, but one thing I did notice, I've played a few sort of for fun tournaments and so on. One thing I always notice is that the people that like make a lot of money early on, they're always out 15 minutes later. Always. Yeah. They take way too many risks, and sometimes it pays off, but at some point that risk doesn't work and you're dead.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite thing about poker. I don't play poker. I just watch poker because to me it's fascinating. Because what you watch is, oh wow, like those highlights of poker you might think are big hands or people make a lot of money. It's not. It's actually players that are coming out. Like, wow, what a fold! Anyone would have called that, but he knew this is not a good risk. I'm coming out.
What a fold!
That's what a fold! It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Final comments on this before we bring in a guest in a few seconds.
Surround yourself with wisdom.
Yeah, that's always good. Okay. When we come back, we're going to have a guest on, and this is a founder who's not in their 20s anymore. So do look forward to that. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Our guest today is Shin. He ditched corporate life, did a startup, ended up getting banned from Apple, went back to corporate life to restock, and recently ditched it for the final time to help people pursue the most important startup in their life, yourself. So Sang is back doing a startup. Welcome, Sang.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. And you're calling in from Singapore today, right?
No, I'm actually in Bali right now.
Oh, you are? That sounds horrible.
Yeah, so I don't have my rig with me. I'm like literally in the living room over here. I hope my kid doesn't come out, but I think we're going to be okay.
No, we'll be fine. So the answer we're looking for today is whether a startup founder needs to be in their 20s to be successful. Before we get to that, let's talk about your story, Sang. I mean, first, what happened with you and Apple?
Oh, well, that was just, they kicked me out. I got banned, right? Like when I say I got banned, I mean like they not only kicked our app out of the store, they went the extra step and sent me a letter saying your Apple developer account is banned. You can't log in with your developer account.
Wow. What was in there that was so intimidating to Apple?
So that's okay. Really quickly, we built this app this was like over a decade ago that let you basically go off grid on your phone so nobody could collect your data, and gave you the option to share your data with us in exchange for basically payments. So we're cutting out the middlemen, which is Google and Apple, and connecting you directly to the advertisers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing was, they helped us build it, right? So we weren't stupid. We weren't like, oh, we're going to build this and hopefully they won't kill us. We were like, oh, you're going to help us build it? All right, let's do this. But then, of course, Facebook came calling in and the rest was history.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good story. They helped you build it, then they killed you. That's fine. Okay. So, you started your career in corporate life. So let's start there. Why did you go to corporate to begin with?
Well, I mean, that was just what you're supposed to do, right? So I did what I was supposed to do as a good son. Go to a good college, study hard. I mean, I did a little partying. I landed a good job with a good brand name company with some good brand name title. Yeah, so that's why.
Yeah, and so then turn it around again. Then why did you leave corporate and go into startups?
Yeah, well, I mean, life happened, right? So you can only go so far before some exogenous / traumatic event finally catches up to you. Some people have it when they're kids, so they have like, it's not midlife crisis, but early life crisis. But at some point in your life, you're going to run into it. For me, it was part of it was going through a divorce, and that really was kind of it was tough on me, man. So there's a lot of like soul searching going on, and like that kind of triggered the whole like, what am I doing here? What's the whole point of all this type of questioning?
And at that point, you got to the conclusion that I need to reset more things in my life. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was like this, rabbit hole where you start asking these questions, and then, you start pulling the strings off the sweater and you realize you're not wearing anything. And so basically I was like, oh crap, I don't even know why I was doing whatever I was doing. I thought I did. But then again, when I actually was forced to really ask myself, I couldn't answer it.
How old were you at that point?
Oh yeah, so I wasn't a kid anymore. I had a pretty good run at corporate, so I think I was like in my early 30s, early mid 30s.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. So and that was the first run, and this is interesting because we're going to talk about age, and you sort of tried both, youngish, and then again now. And when you went back into startups again, was there a specific reason for that too?
Yeah, so this time is like totally different because the reason I went back to corporate was like I knew what I was doing, which was I was just going to fuel up. It was like a gas station, basically. I mean, they pay you money, right? Well, there's a couple of things. They pay you money, and you're supposed to use the company as much as they use you. And the way I do that was to use their brand name to build my network and say I work here and I'm some blah, blah, blah title guy. So, build a lot of networks and meet a lot of people, which eventually will matter later on. And then that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the introduction, when we used the word restock, it feels like that's a pretty accurate description. So you went back into a machine that is working, and then you use that machine, right?
Absolutely. And what I'm trying to tell people, or part of the thing I'm trying to tell people, is that's exactly what you should be doing. Because they're not your family. And, if that, there are means to an end, and if that becomes the end of itself, and I know people who have reached the end, meaning like they actually got all the way to the top. Like, get to CEO, then after CEO is executive board and all that stuff, they're there. But it's like, they find out that at the top of the mountain, it's empty. It's not what they thought it would be.
Yeah.
So I didn't need to go. Not that I could go up there, but I just saw those people get there, and I'm like, I'm going, and I'm like, yeah, no, I want to tell the people downstream, like, yo, man, just keep it real, know what this is about, and start developing your real plans in your life.
I love that. I love that so much, because also like a lot of big companies, they do look at people as resources, right? I hate that word, but it's like, so then cool. Then the company is also my resource.
Totally.
I'm also going to take advantage of the company.
It's both ways.
Yeah, it totally is. It should be, at least.
Yeah. Because so many people just sacrifice so much, so much time and their weekends and whatever for these like big corporates. And I never understood that, it's like, no. Yeah. So.
Okay, so actually, this reminds you a little bit of when you talk about getting to the peak of the mountain, and you see that maybe there's nothing there. Have you read Andre Agassi's book? I forgot what the name is. We'll find it. But it's really quite amazing, because what really drove him was like he really, really hated to lose.
Yeah.
And then the peak of the book, and please, you don't have to switch off, because it's not. But he just realizes that winning is just not as sweet as it is rough to lose. So yeah, it's great to win, but he hates losing much more than it's great to win, which is quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, no, I haven't read that book, but I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's an amazing. The book is amazing. I will highly recommend it. Okay, so what we want to dig into now, and is advantages and disadvantages, right? So we've actually all tried here. So someone would argue, why aren't there more young people? Hassan is still very young, but why aren't there more young people on here? But we can say that we've tried being young and mature. So we've tried both. If you only have young people on, they haven't tried being a little bit more mature. So the thing I want to spend some time on here is advantages and disadvantages of being young and more mature. The first one, look at it as a young person. What are the advantages of being a young person? Where do you guys want to start?
Wasn't the young guy's part?
I mean, with my back pain recently, I don't think I'm young anymore. But
you haven't sitting too much.
Yeah. But some of the stuff we talked about earlier before saying, join just like this high risk tolerance, right? Like this idea for me, high risk environmental tolerance. This I can just sit anywhere and sleep anywhere and eat anything, and again, like it just doesn't matter. I'm in a dorm room with like 6 people, and I'm eating like half a ramen thingy. It just doesn't matter. And our bodies allow us to do that actually for a long time. In our 20s, and then they stop allowing us to do that, and they start complaining, and so to me that's a huge one that really affects this. That's a big advantage in a way, although you're destroying yourself, but it is an advantage.
But you can handle it.
Huge advantage.
Yeah.
Don't remind me of my younger days.
Yeah. And the second one I have on the list is also commitments, right? You have fewer commitments, which means the ability to also do things like you just, at 22, you probably don't have 3 kids and a partner. That really matters too. You have incredible freedom to do all kinds of stuff. I think that really does matter a lot too.
Yeah, no, totally. You start accumulating these thing called responsibility as you get older.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing with young founders sometimes is that they have more disruptive ideas. It's a lot of the really sort of game-changing startups, Snap, Facebook, and Google, all young founders. So is there a risk and so on? Is there something there too?
Yeah, no, I think it's what it is actually is they don't have as much information. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. So we were just talking about, machine learning, for example, right? So if anybody who's watching this or listening to this, if you've ever done machine learning training, you understand about overtraining, undertraining, the amount of information you give to the model, and then, the model tries to figure its way out, and then you give it little pointers here and there, like parents, to help the thing out, right? And so at the beginning of the process, the model doesn't have that much info. And so it's just really thirsty, right? And so anything is possible for the model. Like it can go in any direction, right? And so, as you keep building it up, then it starts to be a little clearer, start to see some clarity into the model, and And that's basically getting older, right? That's what they say, you kind of figure out who you are as you grow older. That's kind of like the ML model kind of like crystallizing into some thing, that whatever it is that you're building. And so it's just amount of information isn't there when you're younger. And that, as a result of that, is this what we call exploration, and trying all different things out, see what we're seeing.
Open-minded, huh?
The worst thing to do if you're young is to not do what the machine learning algorithm does, which is to try all kinds of things and start learning from failures or successes, and instead just stick in this path that's been given to you. So it's I don't know why I'm going into this AI thing. We shouldn't have had that.
I love it.
But imagine if you had an AI model you're training, and you gave it like this one way only for it to learn. Yeah.
But to also invite like the supervised learning every now and then,
right?
Yeah. And to also bring in like, oh shit, like that was wrong, that was right, because one thing about younger people is the stubbornness. It's terrible. I see that with so many like young founders. It's just no way. My way is the right way. I'm not going to take any advice.
You gotta love that. That's
which is great, and it can hit both. I really think it's important too, but it's also something can be. They need some coachability. You need 20% to get in there, but not necessarily more than that. I think similar to what you guys are saying is, when I started Vivino, I was in my late 30s, and I had some of that naivety or whatever you want to call it around the wine industry because I didn't know it well. So we did things that anyone who knew the industry just like, yeah, these guys are stupid. They're never going to make this. And then total outsiders come in and change things. It's a little bit of that young people have sort of more of too, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, like Sang's company, the first one, it's like, who would think, like, if someone's older, I'm just going to cut out the middleman for data, which is like the big thing that makes money for like the big tech companies. They would just go like, nah, that's too crazy. I'm not going to do this. Whereas, when he was
appropriately crazy.
He's like,
I like it.
Fuck it, we're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're praising young people here, which we should obviously. What about the disadvantages of being young? What else? What are they missing?
Yeah, I mean, so I wouldn't actually. I personally I wouldn't describe it as an advantage or disadvantage, but it's just rather a configuration of who you are at a certain point of time. Like I said, like earlier on when you're younger, there's a couple of configurations, some parameters of who you are. You don't have enough information. You have more, how do you call it? Strength, if you will, and like Hassan was saying, he doesn't care about. So you're in a different like setup, right? And the question is, what are you doing to maximize that dialing in of that setup of who you are at that moment in your life? Understanding what the setup is, and so I mean, like, what are some of the, if you want to call it a weakness or I guess in that sense a lack of, it would again be the flip side is you don't have the knowledge, right? You don't have the information. So that means, if you extrapolate to what that actually means, it means you probably know less people. You have probably a smaller, generally speaking, right, influential sphere, number of connections. You haven't seen as much things. So you don't have that pattern recognition ability in your brain to like say like, hey, if I see this is going into, for example, a dead end if I continue this way. That kind of information driven, you want to call it intuition or whatever you want to call it, it's probably not as developed yet.
For good and bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think like the network thing, like going back to playing your hand, as Sang said, is a big one when it comes to what you actually end up building too. Like I feel like when you're younger and you don't have that much of a network, you have to build something that's so much more impressive kind of thing, because this thing has to be so different and cool and whatever, and to kind of attract customers and people. Whereas like once your network is bigger, you might even just have an idea or whatever, and like people will like throw money at you kind of thing. You're not going to have that when you're younger. So you have to know that, no, I have to spend a lot of time and like build something amazing if I'm going to make it.
You maybe have to be more. You maybe have to be more disruptive and so on as you're younger. What about and this? I might pivot into something a little bit different here. But what about finance? When you get older, you might have a little bit more resources too, also financially, and be able to, hey, maybe you save a little bit of money. I guess that matters too, right?
Yeah, totally.
I think absolutely. I mean, yeah, I don't miss my days building my startup and having ramen. Like when I was talking about the whole that was me, and it's just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. And it
But it could also be a motivation, right? You have a true burning platform.
It could be. I'm again. We talked about it a tiny bit earlier, but I'm now like a little bit against it. Like it's just this whole. I don't know, this whole putting yourself under all this pressure, this whole pressure makes diamonds thing. Sure, maybe sometimes, but I am always so impressed with what a well-rested, well-fed mind can do, and like the kind of ideas that mind can make. And I think a very, very stressed mind that's still worrying about surviving can thrive a lot less, I think.
Yeah.
No, I believe that.
Yeah.
I say, people that are like, hey, but well, you got to do Elon Musk, man. You got to like work 24/7, sleep under the desk, otherwise you're not going to make it like him. And I'm like, bro, that guy, if he actually got rest, he would have actually done better. That you're not getting this part, guy. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway.
Probably true. Okay, so we've talked about the younger advantages, disadvantages, which means we also covered the more mature. I want to pivot a little bit into one thing, a specific thing, and that's funding. Is there a difference between young and more mature founders when it comes to raising money? I think my take on it, a really boring answer, it depends. So I think sometimes experience can drive you to funding, and sometimes like young, ambitious ideas can drive you to funding and so on. I've seen a little bit of both. What do you guys think?
It depends if it's smart or dumb money funding.
No, that's true.
That's basically, you know the dumb money. I'm not going to say who they are, but you know who they are. And I've been on the investor side, right? So I've been in those meetings. So I know what they're. Sometimes they don't say it, but they're thinking it in their head. And it's kind of, there is this thing about it was really stupid, right? It all started because of this whole like Silicon Valley blowing up. Before Silicon Valley, it wasn't like, oh, you're 20-year-old startup guy. Yeah, no, it was like Colonel Sanders, like 50-year-old dudes. Then like freaking Silicon Valley happened, and the thing about Silicon Valley was it was like the first time digital came out, right? And so that like completely leveled the playing field. It was like infinitely scalable, like immediately. Things that we just couldn't do before, like all of a sudden it is possible. And that's why like young people all of a sudden level playing field, even lack of experience, good idea.
Lower barriers of entry.
Digital will do it for you. And so the product of that was like the Zuckerbergs and, all those people. And everybody likes a good story, man. Like that sells. It's clickbaity, man. Like young kid billionaire. Wow, dude, who's not going to click on that, right? Although, as you know, that is a smaller percentage, it sells. And then the stupid money eats popcorn and buys that selling, right? And they get
100%.
Yeah. I also see it a bit like penny stocks and actual stocks, where like the youngers are like kind of these penny stocks that you just do a whole bunch of them and you like just have fun with it, and then you're I see like a lot of like actual investments go into the actual stocks and the older folks that you're like, okay, like this is the real thing. So
but I will say, in my experience when it comes to funding, I definitely got much better at it as I got older. At the same time, I lived in Silicon Valley and spent a lot of time pitching the biggest investors in Silicon Valley. And again, I was over 40 when I moved to over there. And I definitely felt that I was not the prototype to build this kind of startup. Like a consumer app, bang, bang, bang. Who is this fucking old guy?
Yeah.
And nobody ever said that, but I did feel that once in a while, I must say.
No, totally. I totally agree. And it's out there. It's just a big who knows who network when it comes to going to all the doors that you got to knock on.
Especially in San Francisco.
Yeah, man. It's a small community. It's an echo chamber. That's why they call it the echo chamber, right? This is echo chamber.
It's such an echo chamber. It's such an echo chamber.
100%.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You had to, but you know what? You did it. You got through that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You can raise the money, find the right people.
There's a movie that talks about you disrupting wine now, right? So
yeah, there you
really?
go.
That's dope. I gotta watch that movie.
Oh, if you haven't seen that, you should check it out.
I gotta watch that movie.
I think it's on Amazon. Amazon Prime, right?
It's on Prime. Yeah, it's a documentary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you recommend it because I wouldn't do it. No, it's great. It's good. So before we move on here, I want to give a little bit of advice to people on both sides, and I can start with it because I think we're really concluding here is also that it's just it all depends. Like you have so many strengths as a young person, and you have other strengths as you get older. It really also depends on what you're building. But my sort of advice to both young and more mature founders is use your strengths because they are different. Find out what they are. And we've talked about a lot of them here. Use that, double down on that. I don't know if we talk too much about focus, but another one is focus. As you get more mature, you might have less time, you have family and so on. Focus and use the strengths you have. I think that's sort of my thing, really. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give advice to more mature founders, but I would say like for younger founders, it's really just like, I think staying humble and learning as much as possible. It's so much easier, I feel like, to learn when we're younger. Like I'm talking like really technical stuff and just being able to understand what you're doing really, really, really well. That's something that I felt like I can learn a million things when I was young. I mean, I still try to learn as much as I can, but there's just the sponge that you are when you're younger, and just like to use that to its utmost earlier. And being humble and reaching out for advice and talking to people that are older than you that have been through things. It's invaluable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I have this analogy when it comes to this, and it has to do with sports. See, when you're a rookie, I don't care what sport, football, basketball, or any hockey, when you're a rookie and you come into the league, every single second you're in the game, you're at 120% because you got something to prove. So if you're Michael Jordan or if you're Wayne Gretzky or whoever, like Maradona when he was younger, I mean, every second he was on, 120% effort rate. Then when you're a veteran later on, you don't play that way, right? You don't play life or the game that way. What you do is you go in the game and you kind of see what's up, right? Like who's the opposing team? Is my teammates feeling, oh, maybe this guy's not so hot to say. So I'm going to like adjust my game to what's going on around me. And then I'm going to play the game that way. And in sports, there's this saying, you don't force the game, you let the game come to you. And that's what the veterans know how to do. And what I do with life is exactly that. I let life come to me now because I've been around long enough. So I let the game come to me. But when I was younger, you got to go out. You got to do the rookie thing. You got to like go out, like, we've been talking about here, like really like increase your surface area exposure and everything. Go 110%, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. But I tell you one thing though, usually championships aren't won by the rookies in their rookie year. It's usually won by the veterans later on in their career. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you can't. You could still, I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, that's the case. And that's why even the data shows about startup founders, right? The percentage of success.
Patience.
Yeah. So I have one story. I think I totally agree with it. People just work smarter when they get older and like, oh no, I'm just going to do this now. The other thing, we know that's a waste of time. I'm just going to go here. And I have one story. I got a pilot's license. I wasn't very mature, but I was 38. And at that time, you could already feel that you're maybe not learning as fast as previously, right? You talked about also developers and so on. They're in their 20s, maybe into, Hassan is his age and so on. But I remember when it came to the pilot license, I was soloing. I think I'd done like 17, 18 hours of flying with the instructor, and then I was soloing. And the instructor said to me, Heini, this is great. You're fine. You're soloing at 17 or 18 hours, whatever it was. And he said, like the young kids, I can solo them at 10. But the problem with them is that they haven't done the theory yet. So I was done with all the theory exams because I had the discipline and they didn't have the discipline. So they always ended up flying a lot more hours with instructor because they didn't have the discipline to get the other stuff done. So we ended up soloing at the same time because I had more discipline, but they were actually better at flying. Okay, we are back, and let's dig into one big question. Are you better now than you were in your 20s? I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Sang, here right away. So, are you better now than you were in your 20s?
Hells yeah. First of all, I got to say yes for all the young ones to have something to look forward to, because you don't want to hear an old guy saying, "No, I'm not as good as in my 20s." You got to have something to look forward to. I believe I am. I'm better in more ways than I am deficient in others. So net, I'm better.
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm going to jump to you, Hassan. Are you ready? Look, again, what do you think? Well, let's take 10 years ago then. Hassan, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I think it's night and day, right? Like when we're younger, I think like we're just what do they say? Positively guessing or whatever, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot more thought that goes into our decision making. I think, and that's nice.
Yeah, I guess we're all going to say the same thing. That's kind of boring. But it's there are things that we did better as young people, but as a sort of rounded founder and so on, I am just so much better. And look, the first startup that I was really involved in, I just learned so many things. And thank you, investors, for putting money into that, because that was really big founder education right there. But you just get better, right?
It's like the corporates who use them for that, the investors who use them for this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I hope they come back for the second one, because that's where they make the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, you just get so much, but for me, it's about focus. It's about discipline. It's also about, maybe you might have less resources because you're busy with other things. That just makes you more disciplined in doing the right things. So all those things, you're just so much better. And when it comes to fundraising, I mean, it helps that you had some, success behind you. But you also just become so better at it. Like, yeah, I'm not going to waste time with you. You're not going to invest, or you're just not the right for me. So all those things, you just waste so much less time.
You know what Sang said earlier about just like pattern recognition, for me, like that's one of the biggest things, whether it's like funding, building a company, hiring someone, building a team, finding a co-founder, like all of this stuff. You failed or had a success, but usually it's more the fail thing. And you're like, oh shit, I really fucked up doing this in the past. Yeah. So you just know. And I feel like there's no way you can know these things without just messing them up at some point. It just felt that way for me. There's no way.
I don't think you have to. So the reason why you can't just intellectually read something and then know it, and then that becomes your intuition, is because there's a missing component called emotion. And we know neurologically that emotion is very involved in the writing onto your memories of your brain of information that happens to you. So you can't experientially learn without the emotion component. And that's why you got to live through things, right? Otherwise, yeah.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of Stoic philosophy, and there's a philosopher called Epictetus in his book, The Manual. He says that if you just like study philosophy earlier in life and you enjoy it, and you're like, oh, these are some really cute quotes, I'm gonna post them on Instagram. Then you're merely he didn't say Instagram, I'm sure, but then you're merely a grammarian. And the only way you're a philosopher is if you actually embody them every day in your life. And it's harder to embody them without going through the struggle and without, like Sang said, going through the whole emotional roller coaster of just living. So
and what you said earlier, Sang, about the 120% as a young rookie, right? That is so important, because we wouldn't have gotten it if we didn't do the 120% earlier. So you can't sleep your way through the 20s and 30s and then say, oh, now I'm old and clever. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. You have to go through those things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And at the same time, if you're in your 40s or you're in your 50s and you're just getting started, that's more than fine too. I think it's Gary Vee who talks a lot about this, about like, oh, it's never too late to start, and like he started super late. I think like the Walmart founder did it at like 44 or something. He did nothing before that. So it's never too
and KFC is the famous Kentucky Fried Chicken, right?
Yep.
And McDonald's
Colonel Sanders. I don't know how old he was.
All the freaking fast food chains.
Yeah. They figured it out late in life. Fantastic. So we're gonna go to the next thing here. I think we really covered this subject really well. Do you have any final comments before we move on? We're good. Okay. So something we always do here is, what are you obsessed with right now? And this time I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think, because I'm going to start out myself here, because you started the podcast again. Now we did a few weeks of time off, trying to rethink and so on. And I am super obsessed now. I'm incredibly excited about getting started again. This is episode 19, and we're changing things up quite a bit. We are now, it was sort of news focused in the beginning. I realized it didn't work that well. People were not that interested. And now we're actually moving into pretty much what we did on YouTube, but in a podcast format. So something we can learn from. Find one subject, cover it really, really well in an hour or so. And I'm just really, there are many advantages with that, but I'm just really excited about to see how that works. And the numbers, briefly, we don't talk about that every week, but once in a while, I mean, they're still small, but at least it looks like we're getting to 1,000 downloads, listens every episode now. And obviously, when you get to Christmas, we need that to be 10K. So I need your help on that. So super passionate about the podcast this week, getting started again. It's great fun. Look forward to releasing this one too. So who wants to start? What are you obsessed with right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I'm obsessed with getting the word out to as many people as possible, which is kind of why I'm doing the startup now. So I figured out it was time to quit my job again. I refueled enough, and the time had come. I also knew what I wanted people to learn of, and which is the way to factory reset yourself and kind of start life. And within there, so yeah, that's why I started a YouTube channel too, just like, I don't know, like 7 months ago. It's still brand new, but getting the word out.
We'll link to it.
But the thing is, it's really about finding the self within you. And the thing about this simulation that we call reality, that we render in our heads through our brains, well, what is actually, the self within, right? Are you just an NPC that's just going through the simulation with, you think you have choices that you're making volitionally, but maybe not. If you're just an NPC, you just operating according to the universe. Or is there, something else controlling aside from your thoughts and your mind? This sounds a little Buddhist, but there's some of that thinking going on in there. And who is the self, and finding that in order to understand really what you want to do in life and what fulfillment actually means for that self is what I'm obsessed with. And as I don't have the full answer, and I'm not building a new religion, but I kind of try to do like Steve Jobs, which is, I didn't invent anything, but I put it together in a way that just kind of works. And that's kind of what I'm obsessed with right now. I'm still putting it together, but at the same time starting to spread the word.
Amazing. And can I just add, what is the format? Because that is your new startup, is communicating that or teaching that, right? How do you do that?
I mean, primarily, so at the top of the funnel is digital platforms like YouTube and Substack. I used to post quite a bit on LinkedIn, but I kind of stopped because, LinkedIn is, it served its purpose. And underneath that, as the funnel constricts, I plan to have actually, like, because again, like we said, you have to have experiential learning. You can't just learn these concepts, and I can't do that at scale, right? You can't get 10 million people together at once and experience something. So the funnel goes small, and small groups of people over time I plan to get together, and that's why I'm partially here in Bali. This is one of the energy centers in the planet, I think, and find other energy centers to gather people together who are interested and like-minded.
Exciting.
Wow. That's fascinating.
That's very cool.
Wow. Okay. So for me, like my
so match that, Hassan.
I can't. But my
come over here. I'll give you some stuff to. Never mind.
Exactly right. I mean, my obsession is a bit split right now between some of this. So I've been doing a lot of music lately. I've been going back to that. I used to produce a lot of music, and now I'm like producing music. So that's been fun, kind of getting back into it.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then at the same time, I mean, I started a new startup, and my obsession has been about like learning and education. Like I've always been like a huge kind of like a revolutionary education person. I stopped taking tests in school from 9th grade until like I graduated, because I thought that they were wrong. That was the whole thing. And so now, like,
the young ones are stubborn. You are right.
Yeah. Right now, specifically, I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I build the best possible tutor kind of thing, based on any kind of content, right? But also trying to think bigger in terms of, how can I, like, fix education? I know that's really big thing.
That is big
to think about. But I love what Sang is saying around, like, experiential learning. I think there's a lot of that's missing from just, like, the everyday universities and courses and all of this. And it's also, you just gave me, like, a whole other thing to even think about while building this, right? So that's awesome. Yeah,
fantastic. So music and your next startup here, we're definitely going to cover your startup later too, Hassan. I'm sure of it.
We'll see.
Yes, for sure. And we should listen to your music too. Maybe.
Yeah, I want to listen to it too. No, I'm down.
I'll do some podcast intro music for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You have to.
Let me use it on my shows.
Yeah, we all need music.
Let's do it.
Cool. We've come to the end. Thank you, Hassan and Sang. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you guys, by the way. It was an enjoyable convo.
Yeah,
Great pleasure to have you on. Please make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and please leave a review and rating. It really helps. For all of you on YouTube, please make sure you check Raw Startup, where you'll find a lot of videos about building a startup. This has been Founders Weekly. Now stop listening, go build something.